All right, mate. So let's talk about creating space in the downswing. We see so many players as they're approaching the ball, they get into this spot where their pelvis is thrusting, the hand path is moving out towards the golf ball, the club's behind, and then we're getting all sort of funky compensations down at the moment of impact, right? So creating space in the downswing, we see a lot of the time it is from players not creating enough turn in the backswing, but let's assume within reason, the player's in an okay position at the top, but then the hands are getting too deep, the lead arm's getting too pinned, the body's thrusting towards. Like, how do we create space in the downswing?
That's a really good one. Obviously, you see a lot of as well. But again, with most players, often you go back to how they move through backswing. There's usually some things they can do to help them. But say they are in a good position at the top, you actually then somewhat cued on something that kind of hit me there. You said almost the hands, and the hands how they're in here. To me, in a lot of cases, it comes back to the player's perception. And the perception, so many players feel as though that they need to
Swing from the inside.
They need to come, yeah, the hand path needs to come more from the inside than it actually does. When you look at a lot of the great ball strikers, the hands are actually exiting quite far left around them.
Yeah.
So if you're getting too much in here, you're never going to be able to get that nice low left exit with the hands that you see with a lot of good ball strikers. So I mean, for me, when you go again, I like to keep things simple for players. If you want to, it's not about positioning your hands in a position in relation to your body, because as soon as your arms get behind your body, you're going to be stuck. It's how do we create that space with the body? Okay. So if you were to set up here, Kerrod, now, and then just move to the top of your backswing there. The pattern that I see with a lot of players in transition that really cause them to kind of lose space is how they go to create power and their rib cage. So if you just move down here now and almost into an early, like an extended position like that, that one. Yeah, that's it. You see how like the lead side of the rib cage starts to elevate there. So when they actually get to impact, like the rib cage is actually very much elevated to the sky.
Huge, yeah.
So for me, a simple one for players. So I'm going to try and jump into a position here just to kind of show the camera. So the pattern would be like this, where the rib cage points somewhat high and up in front. That's it. Yeah, exactly. So we'll be working more towards. If you can imagine, there was almost a laser coming out your sternum there.
Yeah.
You want that laser to almost track down to the ground through the shot all the way through. So you're actually using your rib cage, because a lot of people, they put focus on, they might be trying to keep weight on the heels, might be trying to keep the pelvis back. But again, if the rib cage is going here, the pelvis is often adapting to it. And for some players, that is a great feel. Obviously, the feel of the pelvis and everything like that, because everyone's different.
Yeah.
But for me, in this scenario here, I find it helps a lot of players when they focus on keeping the back to the target just a little bit longer and keep the rib cage down to the ground in that starter downswing.
I got a confession, right? Is that this has plagued my golf career my whole life, right? When I was a young player, I was in the old camp of keep the trail knee flexed, lower body, big resistance model. My arms used to get super deep, and then I was firing very hard with my lower body. And I was so stuck, and I was coming out there. And for a long time, I was always trying to work on like, I think I need to get more from the inside though. As soon as I try and like hit it straight, it's going block right. How do I hit a draw? And I think as golf coaching has evolved with the benefits of using 3D, biomechanics, we've got such better understanding now of actually how to create these movement patterns. And I think this little representation that I'm about to show for players at home gives a really good understanding to this, right? So what Ian was just saying there, if I take my front bend out of my golf posture, if this is my setup here and I stand up dead straight in front of myself, let's assume golf is played from a level plane. Then all I do from here is I pivot my chest until my hips want to begin to rotate down into that position. And then I add my little front bend in. Now we can see that the hands have arced around my body, right? The hands are in front of my chest. If I do the same thing here and go through there and go down, same thing. So you can see just through moving the chest, we create this low left finish that you see with a lot of pros rehearsing. And that is essentially to reduce the amount of club face rotation through impact. But at the end of the day, it's just improving the sequence of the swing, right? It's just ensuring the hands are staying more in front of the chest, which is something that we see every single high-level golfer do from P6, this position here, through to this position here. It is just like bread and butter, mate. It just fits so perfectly well for the players and it makes it look so easy. So based on kind of what we're talking about here, in regards to that sort of player that was in that position, was really kind of struggling to create any space, if they're trying to do it, and I was laughing when you were saying like sticking your butt back, just throwing the butt back and then trying to do that, well, the hands, they're not moving in sequence with the chest.
No.
At all, are
None
they?
of that's it. And I like that you've brought it to sequencing, because that's really where it needs to come, this as well. Because often from the top, when a player's trying to get the hands on the way down, they then start working out of sequence. Because the first thing, if you look at my pelvis, I'm moving that way with my hands. Now all of a sudden my left hip is not opening and firing through.
Yeah.
So a lot of the movement and a lot of the way the pelvis moves, just the body moves in response to where the hands are and what the hands are doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, from the top there, if you can create that space, then all of a sudden your hands and arms, they have the room that they need for all the different segments to move the way that we would want them to move.
I love that. So when it comes to a player that, let's say they are in a position where they're thrusting towards the target, then they go, okay, well, I don't want to thrust that. Then all of a sudden I push my butt back. We're still in square one where the hands are still behind. They've got no room. Eventually they're still going to get back to the same position, right? Yeah. So a lot of this is created from the top of the swing. Let's assume that we're in a very functional position here, is that instead of trying to swing from the inside, if you're trying to hit a draw, it's more about creating a relationship and a harmony between the hands and the arms and how that body moves in space. The body transports the hands and arms down into position. It is not us trying to manipulate the feeling of driving the hands in a certain direction, which will then affect the way the body moves, right?
Yeah, absolutely, especially in transition. I think most people will be aware of, we want to see the lower body move. Then that's going to be go then through the chain, then the rib cage, then we're going to see a lot of stretch across the lead shoulder, and then we'll see the hands and so on and so forth into the club.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what we're looking for, like from a sequencing standpoint. But it's essentially in the downs when we're looking at the bigger segments doing the leading. Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe this is a pretty good reference for players, right? They put this golf club, let's say about mid-sternum from here, and let's say they get themselves into a top of swing position. The player who's running out of room, this end of the golf club would move up and towards yourself, versus what we would see with the professional is that end of the golf club would actually stay down for longer.
Absolutely.
In transition, getting back to this stage, removing the arms, and then following through, right? So is there another feel that you would add to that?
No, that was actually a really good, really good little analogy. If there's one actually that other feel, it would be more the rib cage almost positioning. If you were to able to somewhat, and I think it was more just because you were holding the club just in there, it almost positioned your rib cage in this position here. But if you look at a lot of the top players as they're on the way down, they have this nice round to their spine. Yeah. So that in its own can help create the space as well. So it's not. It's almost as if you add the third one there, it's like, let's keep the back to the target a little longer. Yeah. Let's keep the rib cage down, but let's keep the spine nicely rounded. So to do that, it's almost like the ribs have to hug the chest a little bit as you're moving through. So that gives you a little bit more space as well. Yeah, I love that. So creating a simplified representation of everything we've discussed here. And I think it's important for players to understand the depth of the information so we can put it together for a simple drill, right? And I would say that relative to what we've talked about here, address is very important, backswing is very important, but if this player is still getting into a position where their body is thrusting towards and the lead shoulder is getting high, having the understanding that from the top of the swing motion there, it is a matter of letting this club come down underneath due to the sequence. See, my upper body is facing back towards the target for longer, which is naturally bringing my arms down. And as soon as I try and get this draw by bringing the hands in and out and flipping, well, that's where we come into big trouble. It is. And for players, I always encourage players as well, when I'm working with a player, to just isolate the phase. So for me, let's just say this is transition. So let's just say the hands, let's just say they were about lead arm parallel on the way back. Then the lower body starts to move to about lead arm parallel on the way down. So it's just a nice little phase of the golf swing. So if I was to get you to go to, say, a lead arm parallel there, and then kind of complete your backswing into the downswing. Yep. So it's like, right to there. So it's like right in that first little move down.
Yeah, that's great. So rather than getting to there, and then if you put that golf club back there, I would say that this player would do this. Yeah, exactly. They'd be more that way. Really the hand path would be more in front. They'd be trying to shallow with side bend. That's exactly what they do there. But I encourage that with all players, no matter what they're working on.
If there's a particular phase of the swing that you want it to improve, just slow it down. Do your reps. Find your own way of learning it, whether it's in the mirror, whether it's just feel, whether it's off camera, whether it's with a coach. But just slow it down and isolate that phase, and then be very clear on a couple of objectives you're trying to achieve.
All right. So I'm going to get a slow feel like this. You are going to give me the feedback by telling me if it's correct. So we're going to go lead arm, parallel, little pump, getting it back into that position. How does that look, Ian?
Looking great there, yeah.
It feels great. All right, let's put it in. I feel like I'm going to stripe this one. You know what, mate? It was probably the best one today. All right, cheers.